Malaysia's Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar says the government has imposed a ban on Israeli shipping company Zim from docking at any Malaysian port, with the Transport Ministry set to take immediate action by implementing a permanent prohibition on the company. The country, though, is also banning ships bearing Israeli flags and will prevent vessels destined for Israel from loading cargo at its ports. The move is largely symbolic and signals frustrations over the conflict in Gaza. The Prime Minister said the sufferings inflicted on the Palestinians demonstrated an abandonment of moral responsibilities and that the massive destruction and loss of innocent lives would only end up causing regional instability and possibly even further conflicts. Now, let's try and understand a bit more of what's happening. We are joined by Naeem Aslam in London. He is CIO of Zay Capital Markets. Thank you for joining us. Naeem, what will the cost of all of this be for Israel? A conflict, but also at the same time bans being imposed.
Sure. Thanks for having me as always. Look, I think it is very clear that all the allies that Israel had in relation to this particular war, they have started to depart now. And they can see that they're trying their best in relation to make Netanyahu understand. Even the public within the country is very much against Netanyahu's government, that he has gone way beyond limits. And I think it is, to many, this is really a good sign that for the first time, apart from just paying lip service, there is an actual reaction from the government, where the government is sending, like Malaysian government, for the first time among all the other governments, sending a very clear signal that if we do not stop, here are the consequences. And I think, to answer your question, we could see, because the way that the Netanyahu is he's really handling all of this particular situation and the bombardment and the killing and the genocide of that, we could potentially see other Muslim countries and other perhaps even allies, the countries which have been allies for Israel, taking very much similar action. Because one thing is very sure, public has shown its determination, its side, from a very clear point in terms of bypassing all the products which are Israeli-based or which are very much owned by Israelis. And now this is for the first time that we have seen a government which has gone beyond a lip service and actually has done something to show Israel, or specifically show Netanyahu that you have gone too far and it is time to stop.
And Naeem, then, if, as you say, this were to be the first in a series of bans and not just a one-off ban, then what would the impact be on global supply chains, but also the price of certain goods, for instance, oil and gas, but not only?
Yeah, so I think that the impact would be very much only limited. This is very much targeted service, right? So it's not going to have a massive implications. It's not going to have any spillover implications in terms of oil and gas, because Israel doesn't have oil, Israel doesn't have gas. So that is not really going to have a massive implications. However, for instance, if this goes into a completely different territory where the U.S. goes that, look, we are still determined to back Netanyahu's government, no matter what the consequences is, no matter how genocide is taking place or whatever it is, we are still going to back, then we could potentially see other countries joining either Malaysia or either not joining Malaysia and then citing perhaps US, then we could see some sort of implications on that, or maybe some Arab leaders will just continue to maintain the neutral position and then will do nothing more than a lip service, which is what we have seen so far.
Naeem Aslam, thank you very much. Great having you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And now let's go to other top stories from around the world. China's Alibaba Group is reorganizing its leadership to align with strategic priorities in the face of technological changes. CEO Eddie Wu will directly oversee the domestic e-commerce arm, Taobao and Tmall Group, which constitutes the world's largest digital retail business. Simultaneously, Alibaba Cloud remains the command center for cloud computing and artificial intelligence development within the group. Shippers have diverted more than $30 billion worth of cargo away from the Red Sea, fearing the threat of attacks from Houthi militants in Yemen. This is as oil giant BP pauses all shipments of oil through the Red Sea, with analysts now expecting oil prices to rise. Iran-backed Houthis are targeting ships they believe are bound for Israel. And inflation in the UK has dipped to 3.9% in November, slowing more than expected. The figure was the lowest since 2021, but food prices still remained high, rising to 9.2% year-on-year. Services inflation and private sector growth are easing as the Bank of England tries to curb consumer demand by keeping interest rates unchanged at 5.25%.